Hello, everyone. This is Henny Espinosa with Just Wish Foundation. Today, we are joined by Michael Goldberg, co founder of iCare. It's a group dedicated to restoring the reefs of Isla Morada and the Florida Keys, including the world famous Alligator Reef. Thanks for joining us on Just Wish Foundation, Mike.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Mike,
Appreciate the
you've been a
opportunity.
professional scuba diver for so long, right? You said over 25 years now. You have over 10,000 dives to speak of. Tell us about the wonders of the ocean that you've seen. The few that very few have seen, I'm assuming. So, tell us about what's down there.
I actually have been an active diver for just short of 40 years. I hate to admit that,
Wow.
but um, the uh, the thing that got me the most, I think, the very first time I started diving decades ago, was just seeing the vibrance of marine life. I'm an outdoors person by nature. Used to spend a lot of time hiking in the mountains and woods. And what struck me the first time I went underwater is fish life is right up in your face.
Mhm.
Whereas you go on a hike and you're in a beautiful mountain setting, and you might see some wildlife at a distance, and it's in most cases it's fleeting. But when you're underwater, everything is surrounding you. The
Yeah.
fish are right in your face. You're interacting with them. You're seeing what they do. They're seeing how they live, how they feed, how they burrow, how they make their homes. There's there's so many different ways that the critters and the creatures of the ocean live, and you get to experience it in a much more personal way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did your experiences as a scuba diver also kind of influence how you live your life?
Um, More lately than as a younger person. So I'm 61 years old, and in other other periods of my life didn't look at it in a conservation type mentality or a holistic way. But certainly now I understand more
Mm-hmm.
my position and in life and what it means to the ocean and how I can influence others and how I live my life, trying to reflect that on others to try to emulate some of the same things that I do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sadly, Mike, you've also seen when you're doing these dives, you've also seen the loss of over 95% of our corals. Tell us what you've witnessed and learned.
Well, decades ago, the corals were a fraction of an inch apart.
Mm,
The density of corals, they literally competed for space on the reef. And there is competition amongst corals to survive. And now the distance between two corals could be 10, 20, 50, 100 feet. That's
mm,
how far apart they are. Meaning that before they were abutting one another, and today that isn't the case. So um, it it's a hard reality, and it strikes me more when I go back to places that I haven't dived in, 10 or 20 years, and I put my face in the water, and I can really see the change and the
mm,
loss. Whereas where I'm at here, it's been a bit of drip, drip, drip. It doesn't shock the system as much. It is shocking, but it's not as opposed to going back to places I used to dive in my earlier days
mm.
and seeing what is just a tremendous loss of coral, a tremendous loss of biodiversity, structure, things of that nature.
Mhm. What causes the degradation and the destruction of these reefs? Just so people understand the different factors that come into play.
Well, there's many. So, and not necessarily correlated, but in a direct sense, we have an impact on the health of the ocean and the health of the coral reef. So we have pollution, which is a major factor. So runoff, farming, phosphates, fertilizers, weed killer that we use to keep our
Mm,
our our, our lawns green. um, there's disease,
Hmm.
and which is triggered by pollution. And most recently, in the last 10 years, we've had a quite a virulent disease that's been called stony coral tissue loss disease. And that disease will take a 500-year-old coral head and kill it within 45 days. Uh, the difficult thing is watching at, at the onset of this disease, not knowing what it was, watching these corals die that you had an intimate relationship with, that we would see day in and day out, see the different critters that would call that one coral head home
Yeah.
and see that structure disappear and all the marine life that that one coral structure supported disappear.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it is it's pretty difficult to experience for someone who's been diving so long. Understand, although, that there is a baseline. So my baseline, and you've heard this term, I'm sure, and in the scientific community they use this term called shifting baseline. Most of the people that I work amongst now are about half my age.
Hmm.
Uh, the interns at iCare, my co-workers at iCare, the staff I have here at the dive shop, their baseline is from the last handful of years, few 3, 4, 5 years, for the most part. They don't know what it looked like back
Decades ago, yeah.
they don't know what it looked like back in the 80s. I try to paint a picture, and they always look at me. Some of the young folk most of the young folk that are around me, they're like, "It really looked that way?" I said,
Yeah.
"That's what it looked like." And
Yeah.
there's not a lot of imagery from back then because we used kind of archaic equipment to
Yeah.
take pictures.
Yeah.
But there's some imagery, but it doesn't really capture the spirit of what we really truly had back then. But people today, they look in and they say, "Wow, it looks pretty cool." They don't know
It
that
was
we have
cooler
lost.
then. Yeah.
Well, it's not just
Yeah.
cooler, but we've lost marine life.
Yeah. It was more
Things that are
vibrant then. Yeah.
we've lost things that are substantial to the
Yeah.
health of the ocean that allow fish populations to thrive. Without the baseline critters that keep fish clean, they see their numbers shrink because the crabs, the shrimp, the blennies that clean the gills
Hmm.
of fish, that clean the scales of fish, clean them of parasites, are so few and far between now that that damages the fish populations.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
addition to the fact that there's obvious overfishing problems that everyone has probably heard about and is well aware of. So there's a lot of threats to the ocean, and
Yeah.
it impacts us. It
Yeah.
impacts our not just not just me, but people in San Francisco, people in Chicago. It
Yeah.
affects your ability as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Mike, tell us about that moment when you met Dr. Kylie Smith. This was in the summer of 2017, right? And you began discussing with her your observation about the reefs.
Yeah. So Dr. Smith and I met several years ago when she came into my dive shop. She was working on her doctorate in coral ecology. So she came in and to fill her scuba tanks for the work that she's doing. And I just started asking her questions because I'm a very inquisitive person, and I knew that what we were experiencing here in the Keys was devastating, and I wanted to fix it. I wanted to help. I wanted to be a part of a solution. And after many discussions over the course of several months, we decided to leverage her science, her context in the scientific community, and my knowledge of the scuba diving industry, and use the assets that I have and others within the recreational dive community, pair those together so that we can open up restoration for the average scuba diver that lives anywhere in the United States or around the world. And that's really how it all took place. We actually met, I mean, we actually put this together sitting in a brewery, scripting it out on a napkin. I kid you not. We were literally scripting it on a bar napkin, and then it came to fruition. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's been a great ride so far for sure.
And then you guys founded iCare a year later, right? Was that 2019?
Mhm. That's
Wow.
correct.
So tell us, Mike, how the community reacted to iCare. Tell us about kind of the volunteers and how the community rallied behind your cause.
Well, the community rally was behind us because they understand. They live here.
Yeah.
The coral reef is the backyard for all the residents here in the Keys. And they understand better than anyone the importance of coral reefs, whether it's for their economy or whether or it's just for recreating. They understand. And so when we put this together, giving them a real and true accessible way to help and be a part of a solution for something that they cared about, it was welcomed with open arms. We have several hundred locals that help us do the work that we do on a volunteer basis. We have many sponsors that sponsor dives for the community to come out and cover the cost of the dive operators so that a local person can get out there and get their hands on some coral and help us rebuild the reef. So it has been a great community program that I'm very proud of.
It unites people for this common goal. So tell us about your goals, Mike, and the mission, the goals of iCare, the programs that you guys do to really help save the corals and our environment.
Well, I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but the goal is to make a coral reef self-sustaining. That's the ultimate goal. So a coral reproduces two ways. It clones itself as it grows, and then it can also sexually reproduce. We call it spawning. And when a coral spawns and it creates a larvae, that larvae will take about 20, depending on the species, 20 to 40 years before it actually can spawn itself. So the goal is to build coral reefs today in an expedited way. We can take and recreate what takes 20 to 50 years. We can condense that down to about 7. Have that coral spawn and create more reef.
Wow.
And once that is happening, then the coral reef is on its way to healing. That's the goal. Does that make sense?
Yes, of course, of course. There's a little aid from us so that these corals really come back to life, procreate and just multiply
Exactly.
for future generations. And I understand, Mike, that your programs, you expose the young people as well, right? You mentioned that there are dives and then they see for themselves the wonderful work that you guys do, not just for the present generation, but for the future generation as well. So how do you think this impacts kind of their way of thinking? So part of your program is also conditioning the young minds to really feel accountable with their environment, right? In protecting it.
I'll give I'm of a different generation, and a lot of people, I don't know, give the younger generation a hard time for whatever reason, but I imagine that's always been the case. But I'll give them a lot of credit because they don't need to be awakened. They already are.
Yeah.
They recognize in a much more visceral way than my generation ever did their role in having a planet be healthy and what that means for the future. that never came up for me growing up. That was never even a consideration or concern. We never talked about it. It wasn't a part of anything. And to be fair, when I first started diving, it wasn't something I ever thought. I never dreamed I would be in the position that I'm in right now. But younger folks, high schoolers, university, they have a different approach, and it's a nice approach that maybe when I was growing up we were chasing money. I don't feel that from them. I don't feel that importance. I have my daughter who's 23. She doesn't have that in her. She wants to be happy, successful, well educated, but what's more important is her role in being fulfilled by fulfilling others. And I find that same from the interns that are underneath us here at iCare. They understand that certain things are more important. And it's truly wonderful.
That's great. That's great. Your story and your organization, Mike, you guys have been honored recently by CNN Heroes. Congratulations. That's how we actually found out about you guys. And do you feel that the more and more people talk about you guys, and the more and more people hear about you guys, that, they will do their part in helping really save this world, in any way we can, in whatever capacity we can? And how do you want to move forward for 2024? Do you have big plans that you want to accomplish?
Yeah, definitely have some big plans. So when I think about what needs to be done on the reef, it's a whole scale restoration that needs to happen. It's not singularly just coral, and I've known that all along, and we are working toward that. So we are going to be branching out into full-scale sponge restoration. There's a symbiosis between sponges and corals out on the reef, and that hasn't been, investigated at all. Other than I know it's there because I've watched the interaction. I see the marine life, how they live within sponges, and how corals do better amongst sponges than not. So, and sponges also provide a filtering process. We're also later this year venturing into herbivore restoration. So we will be the correct word is, we're raising crabs, basically. Sounds kind of crazy, but crabs eat algae, and they have a voracious appetite for algae. So we will be running test programs on certain areas to reinvigorate crab populations right along with the corals that we're putting out, because the corals and the algae compete for turf. Algae wins. It's much faster growing. It grows in much less hospitable areas. And so the less there's more sponges, there's less area for algae to grow. If there's more crabs, there's less algae, and all of that helps corals thrive. So those are our bigger initiatives that we'll be unveiling throughout 2024.
Great. We want to, for us at Just Wish Foundation, Mike, and I'm sure your other community partners and sponsors, we're just so excited to do our part and help support you guys, because we know that it's such an important cause. And you said this has become really a community effort. This has become an effort where everyone is really working together, young and old, all your partners really are making sure that you reach your goals and you achieve your plans, because they're important. This is our world. This is our ocean. Everybody's impacted by how it turns out. For us protecting it, that's really key. And so we applaud you guys for what you do, and for us, we just want to do our part and help support you guys. And hopefully when we visit the Florida Keys, we get to meet and we get to see the wonderful work that you guys do there.
I look forward to meeting you and introducing to you some of the stuff we're doing. Absolutely. It'll be absolutely my pleasure.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much. And see you soon.
And thank you so much.
Thank you. Take
nice
care.
Chatting with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Bye.